8 years ago this month, I was diagnosed with ME/CFS after having symptoms for maybe 6 months, maybe a bit longer. It's hard to tell. But 8 years is a third of my life. I was 16 when I was diagnosed. I'm 24 now. A third of my life has been with this diagnosis. The first 2/3 I was pretty healthy, I was active and sporty, and then at 15 I started having symptoms and I was diagnosed at 16 with ME/CFS. It's one of those strange things of when I was about a year into it and I was having a really hard time, I didn't think it would ever go away. I felt quite pessimistic that my life would always be like that and always that bad and I was never going to get better. I felt very convinced of that, and I was kind of right. I still have ME, I still have anxiety, I still had depression. I didn't get cured, I didn't get magically better at some point, but my life isn't the same as it was. I've had a lot of fluctuations with my ME and a lot of fluctuations with my mental health, and that's a very significant difference. The fluctuations within the illness make a big difference. If 8 years ago you told me I'd still have ME now, I would have believed it. But I think I would have struggled to be okay with it because at the beginning it was so hard. And not to say that it's not hard now, because it is. And there's times where I'm overcome by the difficulty of it. But at that time, life wasn't happy, and that's what I was struggling with the most. The ME was a big cause of the unhappiness, but it doesn't cause that level of unhappiness now. So that alone, whether the symptoms are all the same or not, that difference alone is night and day. The fact that it's been 8 years is both extremely normal to me and really difficult to accept. It feels like it's been forever, and I can barely remember what it was like beforehand. Even in my dreams, I have a walking stick. Even though my body doesn't physically hurt in dreams, usually I'm aware that there's a limit to the amount of physical activity I can do. And if I'm running or walking a long distance in a dream, I quite often have an awareness that there's something not right about it and that I'm going to need to sit down at some point and rest. Even if my body, the dream body, doesn't have that feeling, I'm aware of it. So it's something that's very normal to me and very just accepted in my life, and I might even go as far as to say that it's a significant part of my identity. It's one of those things that it happened right at that key time, the transition period from being a child to being an adult, and that whole transition period was affected by ME, and it's really quite central. And obviously it's not the only thing, it's not the only part of my identity, it's not the only thing, but it is something, it is important. But on the other hand, 8 years is so long and it's quite hard to wrap my head around it. And when I first got ill, they told me that usually if you get ME as a teenager, you are likely to recover after 2 to 4 years. That was the number that they gave us. And I didn't really believe it, to be honest, but my mum did, and she was really hoping for 2 years, and then 2 years obviously passed, and then 4 years passed, and it's been 8 now. It feels quite solid, it feels quite fixed. It feels quite like there's nothing that's ever going to change it, and I find myself in a weird position where I'm okay with that, but also grumpy about it. I think when I think of my future, I always imagine myself to still be ill. I don't expect there's going to be a day where I wake up, feel good, don't think about it, and just do whatever I want, and don't worry about energy or pain or anything. I highly doubt that will happen. Not to say that it won't or can't or whatever, but I don't expect it to. And I kind of see myself working around it forever, you know. There's things I want to do, and I imagine working out how to do them despite it. I don't imagine it going away, and based on the fact that it's been 8 years, it kind of seems like it's not going to. It hasn't shown any signs of improvement. There have been times when it's been better, but we're not on an overall upward trend or anything that would suggest that eventually we'll be better or eventually I'll be okay. It's just back and forth. Sometimes I'm better, sometimes I'm worse, quite dependent on what I'm doing and how much of it. Most of the time online I present a very positive presentation. this is how it is, this is how I deal with it. But I don't really delve into the why is it me and how unfair life is being and, you know, X, Y, Z, those types of things. And obviously those do hit me from time to time, and I won't pretend that I've never said, why is it always me? Obviously it's not always me, and there's things that, you know, challenges that I don't have to contend with, and people who have things worse, but sometimes it just gets on top of you and it feels like it's always you getting the short end of the stick and having to deal with the really annoying, painful, nightmarish stuff. I think that that's something I try to avoid. An 8-year anniversary really has me reflecting on who I was before, how different I was when I was first sick, and how bad it was at the beginning, and how little we knew about what to do. And when doctors gave us advice, we followed it, assuming they knew what they were talking about. We followed it assuming, you know, it would help and it would improve my symptoms and make me feel better. And a lot of the things they suggested made me feel worse. And that's obviously because they don't know enough about ME. They just don't know enough about it. They don't have enough research. They don't have enough evidence for anything. And doctors are kind of in the dark and unsure how to proceed. So they obviously do their best, but they don't have enough information, which can lead to some really horrific attempts to do things that just are never going to work, like graded exercise therapy. When I was still actively getting worse, I was told to do the same amount of activity a day no matter how bad I felt. I was told that every day I needed to go on a walk. I was told not to have naps. Just all these things that I absolutely disagree with now. And now I have all these years of experience. Getting enough sleep is vital, and naps are key for me. Exercise should only be done when you feel good and your symptoms are not bad and you feel like you're doing okay and you feel ready to push yourself a bit. It shouldn't be done when you're actively getting worse or having loads of symptoms and pain. And I think it should be used incredibly sparingly, if at all. But no, we did it, indiscriminately all the time for the first, 2 years. Did it make me better? No. Did it make me worse? Definitely. Absolutely. Without a doubt, it made me worse. Because I was using energy I didn't have. Because what I should have been doing was resting. But the doctors didn't know that. And so we didn't know that. So I just did my best. And it was painful. I was also told to do the same amount of activity every day, which is, in my opinion, absolutely wrong. When you are having a bad day and you feel bad, you should be resting. Yeah, in an ideal world, you would do the same amount of activity a day that wouldn't ever cause a crash. But if the baseline level of activity you have to do every day, for example, at the time for me it was going to school, I had to do that every day, but that was too much, which meant I was always crashing but never resting. And I think a lot of the things they suggest for ME, or used to suggest, are so specific and need to be implemented subtly at the right time. They can't just be, they're not a blanket fix for everyone. And they're in fact a blanket fix for almost no one. But when you're constantly crashing, you need to rest. Again, once you've started to feel better and now you'd like to, keep your baseline, that's when you do the same thing every day. Not when you're way overworking. You don't just overwork yourself to the same amount every day. That's not gonna help. You need rest. And I think we weren't taught that. We definitely didn't know that difference, but I don't think the doctors knew that difference either. And I think that graded exercise, the doing everything the same, and the not having naps were some of the worst things I've ever done, because you need that rest. And all of those things are not designed to give you the rest you need if you're not ready for them, if you see what I mean. 8 years is a long time, and I think the things that have changed are almost endless. I think if you're looking for something positive, I can't promise you that your chronic illness will improve or you'll be cured or anything like that. But that doesn't mean you can't be happy. It doesn't mean you can't have happiness in your life, do the things that you want to do. You may have to do them differently than you anticipated. You may have to take weird routes to do things or take way longer than you anticipated. But you can do them and you can have happiness and you can achieve your goals. And I think that perspective is really important important, because I think the difference is things can be physically the same but also be materially better in so many ways that it's not always going to be like this. If you're in a really bad patch, it's not always going to be that bad. Bad patches are really hard and they're difficult and they make you really feel like you just want to give up, but they're not the only patches, if you see what I mean. Chronic illness is quite a patchy thing, and I think you just have to keep in mind that over the 8 years that I've had so many ups and downs. Sometimes I've been able to walk a mile. A couple of maybe like 4 years ago I was able to walk a mile. Now I definitely can't, but I'm happier than I was then. I have a better social life, I have friends, things like that. But don't think that just because you're not going to recover that nothing's going to get better, because you don't have to be recovered to enjoy your life or to have things improve or to succeed at your goals. And I just really want to get that through to you. If you're in a bad place right now, bad places don't last forever. Unfortunately, they last too long, and longer than you'd want them to, and they're really hard to get through, and when you're in them they feel like they're going to last forever, but they don't. There's always something that can improve and you can get there. I completely believe it. If you want more details in the whole story of my chronic illness, if you want more information about the story of my chronic illness, I have these videos. If you want advice, I have other videos. There's lots of stuff on my channel. I hope this helped, and also happy anniversary to me. I'll see you next time. Bye.